The upper basin states, which you mentioned, that's Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, New Mexico, that's where a lot of the water sort of...
The decrease in the water level in Lake Mead is mostly a human phenomenon in the sense that we're taking out more water than is flowing in.
November 14th, 2025, 9:42 a.m., a conference room in Phoenix. Representatives from 7 states face federal officials. On the wall, a countdown timer, 336 days until the Colorado River Compact expires. The meeting was supposed to produce an agreement for sharing water from the most important river in the American West, the lifeline for 40 million people, the source of irrigation for farmland that produces 90% of America's winter vegetables. Instead, the representatives leave without signing anything. Arizona walks out first, then California. Colorado sits in silence, staring at maps showing reservoir levels that should not be possible. This is the third missed deadline in 18 months. Lake Mead and Lake Powell sit at 37% capacity. At current consumption rates, both reservoirs could fall below minimum power pool elevation within 18 months. When that happens, Hoover Dam and Glen Canyon Dam stop generating electricity. 4.2 million people lose power. But the power failure is not the crisis. The crisis is what happens when 7 states that cannot agree on water cuts watch their primary water source drop below usable levels while the federal government prepares to impose cuts for the first time in 103 years. The Colorado River is running dry, and nobody can agree on what to do about it. The current winter snowpack sits at 23% of median. Climate models predicted this crisis would manifest in the 2040s. It is happening now in early 2026. The timeline is not years, it is months. And the deadlock suggests there will be no agreement, no compromise, no solution. The Colorado River Compact is collapsing, and it may take the entire Southwest economy with it. You own a farm in Imperial Valley, California. For generations on this land, you grow lettuce, broccoli, carrots that feed millions during winter. Your water comes through the All-American Canal. You have senior water rights dating to 1901, the most protected allocation in the basin. Yet in January 2026, you receive notification. Tier 3 shortage declared. Your water allocation reduced by 35%. You must fallow 1,200 of your 3,400 acres. You lay off 40 workers. Revenue drops from $4.2 million to $2.1 million. Your neighbor with 1952 water rights receives a 60% cut. They filed bankruptcy within 6 months. This is happening now across Imperial Valley. And here is what terrifies water managers. Imperial Valley farmers hold the most senior water rights in the basin. They should be the last ones cut. If senior rights holders are losing water, everyone downstream faces elimination. The 1922 Colorado River Compact promises 16.5 million acre-feet of water annually to 7 states. 1 acre-foot equals 326,000 gallons. The compact allocates 7.5 million acre-feet to upper basin states and 7.5 million to lower basin states. Mexico receives 1.5 million under a separate treaty. Here is the problem. The Colorado River does not produce 16.5 million acre-feet annually. Between 2000 and 2025, the river averaged 12.4 million acre. Some years produced less than 10 million. The compact promises for million acre-feet more water than the river produces. You cannot distribute more water than exists. Every year since 2000, the deficit came from reservoir storage. Lake Mead and Lake Powell have been emptying for 25 years. They are now approaching empty Lake Mead elevation, 1,043 feet. Dead pool, 895 feet. Minimum power pool, 1,050 feet. Lake Mead sits 7 feet below where power generation begins to fail. To understand why this crisis is unsolvable, go back to 1922. 7 states signed the compact in Santa Fe. The negotiators examined river flow. From 1905 to 1922, the Colorado averaged 17 million acre-feet. They built the entire legal framework around that number. It was the wettest 20-year period in 1,200 years. Paleoclimate scientists discovered this in the 1970s studying tree rings. They reconstructed flow back to 800 AD. The findings were clear. 1905 to 1922 was an anomaly. Long-term average flow was 13.5 million acre-feet, not 17 million. The compact promised more water than the river could sustainably provide. By the time scientists understood this, it was too late. Cities had been built, farms planted, suburbs sprawled, infrastructure constructed. The Southwest had grown into a civilization, dependent on water that did not exist. The year 2000, the millennium drought begins. Snowpack measures 85% of average, then 78%, then 71%. By 2004, hydrologists realized this is a regime shift. Between 2000 and 2025, the basin experiences the driest 25-year period in 1,200 years. Lake Mead drops 180 feet. Lake Powell drops 150 feet. the bathtub rings become visible from space. Lake Mead does not just store water, it controls the entire lower Colorado River. For intake tunnels draw water at different elevations. The system assumed Lake Mead would maintain 1,100 feet minimum. Current elevation, 1,043 feet. That is 57 feet below design specifications. When Lake Mead drops below 1,000 feet, intake 3 becomes exposed. Delivery capacity to Arizona drops 40%. At 1,050 feet, Hoover Dam cannot generate full electricity. By 1,025 feet, power generation drops 50%. Below 1,000 feet, minimal electricity. At 950 feet, power generation stops entirely. Under current trends, Lake Mead reaches 1,025 feet by summer 2027. That is 16 months away. Half the dam's power capacity disappears. But power loss is secondary. The primary crisis is delivery capacity. As Lake Mead drops, the amount physically deliverable to California, Arizona, and Nevada declines. Not because of legal restrictions. Because of physics, you cannot pump water below your intake elevation without building new infrastructure. A process requiring years and billions. Arizona is experiencing this now. The Central Arizona project depends on Lake Mead water. In 2023, 512,000 acre-feet cut. In 2024, 592,000 acre-feet. In 2025, 640,000 acre. These are mandatory federal cuts. The tier system assumed temporary drought. It assumed wet years would return. That assumption is collapsing. February 15, 2026. Representatives scheduled to meet in Denver. 318 days until compact expiration. Federal proposal, mandatory cuts of 3 million acre-feet. Upper basin cuts 1.2 million, lower basin cuts 1.8 million. The cuts are unprecedented. Before the meeting begins, 3 states announce they will not attend. California declares mandatory cuts violate prior appropriation law. Arizona says it has absorbed disproportionate cuts and will sue. Colorado files a lawsuit arguing upper basin states cannot be forced to cut allocations never fully used. The question is not whether the compact will collapse. The question is, what happens when it does? When Lake Mead drops below minimum power pool and Hoover Dam goes dark. When intake tunnels cannot deliver water and cities run dry. When farms shut down and food prices spike. When 40 million people realize the water is gone, the Colorado River does not negotiate. It does not compromise. It does not care about compacts signed in 1922 or infrastructure investments or economic output. Water follows hydrology. Rivers reflect climate. The